fresh vegetables and also produce hot sauces. So I'm really happy to be here and we'll be looking forward to talking to you all.
This is wonderful. We are here to get a great time of learning. We are here to do so much together. So thank you so much. Welcome everybody to this meeting. It's a pleasure to have you again for the third symposium. I don't know if you have been participating in the previous one, but I just want you to know that we are here to get a great time today. So today we are talking about food security. We are talking about processing. We are talking about our grain market and the potential of the grains we have in Africa. Remember, this meeting, we are talking to us, ourselves, and we are talking to our Africanness in us. And we want to know what potentials, the level of potentials that our grains that we produce in Africa has. And we want to talk some more also about the policy or investment so that, and the innovations so that we can bring together and grow and have food safety and food security. So thank you so much. I'm going to start with you, Mariama, for now. Today we are talking about food security and sovereignty via our grain markets and the leverage on cross-sectorial linkages. So Mariama, I would like you to answer our first question to this panel. It says, what policies and investment measures are needed to leverage Africa's huge grain producing potentials to attain food security? We want to know what policies or investment measures are needed to leverage African huge grain producing potential to attain food security. Can you please go ahead and tell us, please? Thank you.
Okay. So can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. So it's not a very direct question because it's a big question in the sense that it affects the entire value chain, the entire agricultural value chain. So if we're talking about policies or investments that we need to put in place in order to leverage on the huge grain system that we have, I would say the first thing would be to look at policies that encourage improved production and productivity. That will be one. And when we say policy, and we heard discussions this morning about the fantastic policies that we have, we're not really short of policies in our countries, but it's more about implementation of these policies and putting systems in place so that we see our policies from start to finish, and also having the right technology to support some of these policies. If we're going to take Sierra Leone as an example right now, I would say that a big area that we can improve on is that of infrastructure as well, if we're talking about grain. So one, we need improved production and productivity. Our rice productivity is very low. We're talking about 1 to 1.5 tons per hectare. That's like one of the lowest in the region. So if we're able to improve on that, then we're able to make sure that we have enough grain to store. So I would say improve productivity, and that comes with improved extension services, that comes with improved access to inputs such as like the seeds that we use or the fertilizer and the other agrochemicals that we use. So those are basic things along production chain. Also, we need to have improved irrigation systems that can also accompany farmers in their production activities. Leaving production now, another big area that we need to focus on would be sort of like looking at transportation. So infrastructure, we'll start from infrastructure. Our roads are terrible. If you're looking at the case of Sierra Leone again, if you look at high production areas, if you talk about Tomobom and Bondopi and other places in the north, you realize that as much as people are producing, they can't really get their goods to processing centers. So that could be another area that we need to look at. Investment is necessary in those areas. We need to have policies that would encourage, improving those infrastructure that link farmers to market. We also need to look at, so I talked about the roads, and that is directly linked to logistics. I know that former speakers also talked about logistics and how that can be a very big hindrance to accessing markets, to reducing post-harvest losses. I mean, COVID-19 also taught us that a supply chain is very crucial to agricultural development. And if that is to be possible, we need to look at logistics. We need trucks, we need aggregation centers as well to be able to feed into that. Looking at post-harvest activities proper now, we're looking also at energy. Farmers, processors complain about, one, the lack of energy, but also the quality of energy that's accessible in production and processing. So that could be another area. We need to have policies in place that would target high production areas so that farmers will be able to process after they've harvested their produce. That would reduce post-harvest losses, and also that will contribute to the overall grain reserve that we're talking about. So in a nutshell, I would say production, improving on post-harvest activities, and having storage structures in place. We need to have good storage systems in place where farmers and processors can also store their grains to be used. And this also comes with the technology where they need to be taught well. So just to sort of like summarize my points, I would say production with the requisite support services. I would say post-harvest with the requisite support services. We talked about energy, we talked about logistics, infrastructure, but also we're looking at skills building. That's a big problem here, and I think that would be very important to look at. Thanks, over.
Okay, thank you very much, Mariama. Martin, are you online now? Martin, are you online? If you are not online, we'll have to go take our next question to Mariama again until Martin can join. Let's see whether Martin is online, and when he comes back online, he will continue. So Mariama, if I get you correctly, we are talking about productivity, infrastructure, and energy. Adequate and right energy, that's what we will need to put in place. Yes, thank you very much, because it's not a matter of just producing, but you need for your product or your produce to get to the market, to get to where it is needed the most. So we cannot say we produce in Sierra Leone, we have enough grains to feed 6 countries, but it's only kept in Sierra Leone because we don't have the who need them the most. Thank you so much. We'll have to move on to the next question, which I was hoping that Martin will answer, but I don't know if Martin is still able to connect. But if Martin cannot answer, is not online, Mariam, I think I will ask you again. So the question is, what innovations are necessary for Africa to be food self-sufficient? What innovations? We keep saying we have the rainfall, we have the arable land, we have good soil, we have young population, etc., etc. So what innovations do we need as Africans to put in place so that we will become food self-sufficient? You know, a family that cannot feed itself is never respected. We want to be respected, so we want to be able to feed ourselves. What innovations are necessary for us to attain food self-sufficient? Over to you.
Yeah. Again, this is another very sort of like very hot topic these days, where we're always talking about innovation and how that would improve on our agricultural production and productivity and improve overall performance of the sector, right? And sorry. Hello.
Hello, please go ahead. Go on.
Okay, so talking about innovation, I think so like this is like the new baby on the block, where we realize the importance of innovation. And for me, what does innovation mean? Innovation for me means doing things differently. It is doing something new. It's doing something that's smart. It's doing something, it's not necessarily hard, but it's smart, it's new. And at the end of the day, you're hoping and expecting that this would contribute to the overall development of whatever you're doing. In our case, it's the ag sector. And for the different value chains, there are different innovations that you can look at. But I think one thing that really, really cuts across is sort of like that of digital agriculture. In our case, again, in the case of Sierra Leone, and I like to talk across the agricultural value chain. So most times I would start from research and production. I would say one would be research. We need to improve on research. We know how weak our research institute is in Sierra Leone. We need a bit more of innovation. You go to countries like Cote d'Ivoire or Ghana, you see that there's a lot of research, innovative ideas have been put in place and they're being developed. So we need to start from research, have good quality research done, and also be able to link research and development. So that's one for me. Number two, it's production. How do we produce? How is it that we used to produce? How do we produce in order to have increased productivity? For instance, how do we produce so that we're able to produce 3 tons per hectare? That's innovation as well, because it means that we have to do something new. And what that means is we need to have good quality seeds. We need to have improved agricultural practices, how we plant, how we nurse our rice, how do we transplant it? Those are little innovations, but they have very good results, and big results can be seen as well. How do we irrigate our crops if you're doing vegetables, for instance, or if you're also in vegetable farming? How do you increase production and productivity? How do you ensure you have a yearly supply of fresh veggies? You can use your greenhouse technology. You can use drip irrigation system. Those are little innovations. They're small, but they make mighty changes in your production. So I would say those two in terms of research, production are very crucial. And also these are just little things that you do to perform, to increase the performance of your sector. You're also looking at processing. We live in a very, very competitive world right now where if we compare ourselves to even other African countries, people are doing so many things. And I'm so happy that Sierra Leone has also started working in that area, in that sector where we're pushing. We have lots of young entrepreneurs that are coming up. So for me, innovation is transforming your produce, right? At first, we just used to produce pepper and just take to the market. Now we're actually producing and processing it with quality and standards. For me, that's innovation. The packaging are also really good. They talked about branding today. That's innovation. We're also talking about marketing. How do we market? Back in the days, you would need a cell phone to market, but now we're using the social media. We're using Instagram, we're using Facebook. So for me, those are little innovation that we can adopt to our businesses. Just to recap again, for me, innovation is anything new that you add to your business to bring about change, to improve on the performance of your business. And that can cut across research, production, and productivity increase. It goes through processing. How do you process? Is it very manual based? Are we using machinery? That's innovation. How much of digital technology are we using? These days we're all sort of like multitasking. If you can't go to your farm, for instance, how do you supervise your farm? How do you supervise your workers? That's also innovation that you can include. So it's for me, it cuts across the entire agricultural sector. Over.
Thank you so much, Mariama. Thank you. I see you spoke a lot about research, new frontiers, digital, etc. But sometimes there are what we call forgotten grains. We see one of the grains that are easy to grow is fonio. Fonio is so rich and nutritious, it's low in carbohydrates and starch, blah, blah, blah. But we don't grow it much because maybe market acceptability, etc. So innovation or innovating with our grains to help us become food self-sufficient is a new frontier that we must look at. But are not just tied to the minority, to our people. You know, in Africa, there is a crop or a grain for every season. So for example, if it is, there is what we call hunger or lean season, there are some things we eat that is nutritious, that sustains us. So how do we manage this one and produce enough? What equipment do we need? I used to tell people that the previous way we used to do agriculture in Africa with hoe and cutlass, it cannot solve anybody's problem. It cannot solve anybody's food insecurity. So we need to look at equipment. We need to look at maybe smaller equipments or bigger equipments that can do the work and then get results. We need to look at things like maybe drones, maybe drones that can maybe take photos and see whether there is a pest attack on our farms, etc., etc. Because we don't just want to plant. If you have good seed, you have good irrigation, but the management is a challenge. We need to look at all of that. We need to provide innovative ways so that we can. And also, there is one thing I want us to look at. I see that a lot of farmers in Africa are somehow dependent. We are too dependent on handouts. We parade ourselves as being poor farmers, etc. Every farmer, every good farmer knows that how to get their seed, how to get best seed, how to protect their seed. But every time we are still waiting for government or other people to give us handouts. That's not innovative. We cannot use that to become food secure. Martin, are you online? Is Martin online, please? Okay, let's move. We are now going to our next question, which talks about food sovereignty and food security. We want to know what's the difference between these two, between food sovereignty and food security. Let's dig in. Mariama, it's over to you if Martin is not around. Thank you. Can you hear me, please? Martin, are you around? Mariama.
Yeah, okay. Hello?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay.
I was asking the difference between food security and food sovereignty.
So for me, food security is being able to grow your own food and be able to consume your food. Simply put, that's like a very basic definition of food security. FA will talk about, okay, you need to have access to food, it needs to be available, it needs to be accessible. It talks also about utilization, right? So like those 5 different parameters that are used to assess food security. So for me, food security, we always talk about, oh, we want to be food secure in Sierra Leone. It's about really being able to produce, to break it down, being able to produce as individuals and, you know, be able to feed ourselves and our families. If we're talking about food security at a national level, then we're also now talking about being food self-sufficient. We have to be able to produce our own food and also be able to sort of like feed ourselves enough. So taking rice for an example, we eat rice every day. Some people eat it once, some people eat it 2 or 3 times a day. We need to be able to produce enough rice to be able to feed ourselves. So we produce the rice, we process it, we feed ourselves all through the year. For me, that is what food security means. If you talk about food sovereignty, this is sort of like a new baby on the block kind of, but pretty much it is sort of like a food system in which people produce, distribute, and consume food. But they also have some knowledge or control of what happens at the very high level. So for instance, if you're talking about policies of food production and distribution, you also, so that's for me is food sovereignty, where you have this, it's a food system in which people can produce. So I'm a farmer, I produce, we distribute, we consume our food. So it's food security is part of food sovereignty, but also it also engages at that very level, at the policy level that affects the people that we're talking about. Over.
Okay, thank you. Food sovereignty and food security, food sufficiency. Sometimes as Africans, we try to develop or we grow our taste buds to fit other people's food. We don't want to eat what we grow, but we want to depend on import. So this is telling us that we are supposed to grow what we eat and eat what we grow. It's not like you will eat everything, but you remember to distribute, but you must be able to be at the forefront. I keep telling people a house or a family that cannot feed itself does not have respect. So if Africa is not able to feed itself, Africa is not able to feed our people, where do we want to command the respect? Because food is basic. You need food to be able to think about innovations, to be able to think about development, to be able to think about industrialization. So I think the bottom of this chain is food. Let's work hard, let's work smart to be able to provide this basic for our people, for ourselves, for our families. We cannot just say, oh, it's not my business. So food sovereignty, what do we do with the things we produce, but we think maybe our taste buds are like now developed to eating Chinese food, other kinds of food? No. We have cassava that can grow anytime, anywhere. What are we doing with cassava? Are we changing cassava, the face of cassava? Are we producing enough things with cassava? Are we making cassava become important on our tables? There are things that we are forgetting about because we now focus on other things. Food sufficiency, food sovereignty is a need. We need to look at innovative ways of creating that so that we will not just be every morning you have your neighbor that comes to beg food from you, you will not be happy with that person. Okay, let's move on. Mariam, I don't know if Martin has been able to join. Let's move on. It says, what are the major threats to food sovereignty in Africa and what solutions are available? 1, we want to know major threats. 2, we want to know solutions that we can use for food sovereignty. Thank you. Over to you, Mariama.
Yeah, so taking food sovereignty from, sort of like the latter definition, besides sort of like having farmers or processors have access to sort of like policy and all of that, having access to policies and all of that, talking about, so like it's local content, right? And there's a lot of noise around now, oh, salon products, we own salon foods, local content, eat what you grow and grow what you eat. So, but then again, like you mentioned, Bridgetta, there are several threats to this. And one big one would be that of importation, right? So if we take rice, for example, we're importing $200 to $300 million is spent annually on the importation of rice in Sierra Leone. Yet we're also, and this is tax-free in most cases, so very little money is spent to bring it in. But yet we're saying that rice is our staple food. Yet we say that we are promoting local food production. That is one threat to growing enough rice for local consumption, in my opinion. Number 2, besides the rice, for instance, we're talking about poultry as well, right? The same thing happens in the poultry industry where we have lots and lots of local people thriving. So like trying really hard to grow their own chicken meat for local consumption. But then we also have issues with importation of chicken from Brazil. We also have importation of eggs. That's a threat, just to name a few. If you come as well to the vegetable sector, it's the same, lots of imports. So I think in terms of threats, in terms of threats, the main problem will be that of imports, but also the policies that we have in place, the lack of support within the ecosystem from production to processing and marketing. I mean, we've already cited some of the issues that we're having. So for me, those are threats to food sovereignty because we don't produce enough, but also modernization and globalization, which is good in a way, but also we need to know that we're still Sierra Leoneans, we still have our local diets that we consume. We don't need for eat, excuse me, I'm going to speak Korea here. We don't need for eat burger every single day, right? We need to eat rice. We don't always have to eat pasta. We can eat our rice. We can eat, like you said, cassava. There's so many things that we can do with cassava. People actually in Nigeria now, they noodles out of cassava. So even if we can adapt still our diet to what we're used to or those international taste buds, but using our local ingredients. So for me, those are threats. And, you know, talking about solutions now, it's one, again, like I started saying, it's adaptability. How do we adapt our local ingredients? How do we transform them? For me, that's where solution comes in, because also we're evolving as a nation. There's so many young people, very busy people. We're all workers. We don't have time to go to markets and come and cut our plazas or cut our onions. So we still love our food, but then we just don't have time for some. So this is an opportunity as well for young people or for businesses to fill in that gap where you have some businesses already doing it, providing easy services for people. So for me, a solution would be, you know, promoting local content, local consumption of our own food. That's one, and it should be an ongoing process. I know that a few years ago, they had a project which was promoting nutritious Sierra Leonean food. So that could be a constant sort of like sensitization that we need to carry on. That's one. Secondly, we need to transform a bit more, like I said. We need to have more palatable food sources. And then third, just showing like sort of like the importance of our nutritious food. You mentioned fonio earlier, Bridget. Fonio is very nutritious, but we hear people in Senegal and Guinea talking about fonio. But also here, it's sort of like increasing. People are loving it, but then you're thinking, oh, I don't have the time to wash it. It's got too much stone. So this is where innovation comes in as well. Yeah, so yeah, I'll stop there for now. Over.
Okay, thank you. Since you spoke about fonio and innovation on our food and process and packaging, that's one area where my company Lambano comes in. So we get fonio or food stuff ready for your pot, because we have noticed that, you know, when you want to cook imported kind of food, you go to supermarkets, you get things like frozen French fries, you get some of their food stuff already packaged in cans. So you just need to open your can or take from the freezer or frozen item and put in your pot. No prep time, or little or no prep time. But another challenge we have with our food stuff in Africa is that it takes too much prep time. So now there are innovations coming on. For example, in Ghana, they used to eat fufu a lot, or they eat fufu a lot. There is a machine that can pound your fufu for you because of the processes of producing that fufu or converting that cassava into fufu. And there are things that we do. So even pounded yam, there are companies in Nigeria that are doing yam flour and all of those things. So we keep innovating. We keep doing new things to help us sustain our food and our food. We need to remember that all of these have their place. And if you don't do that, you might turn around, we might not be able to solve our food challenge. So one, as Africans, we need to see opportunities, because every challenge for me, I see as an opportunity to do more, opportunity to change or to improve. And also the area of sensitization. I want to say that, let me just An example in the form of some food. For example, in Sierra Leone. In Sierra Leone, one of our food, a very important fish in Sierra Leone is barracuda. We like barracuda, we say blah, 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 or even snapper. In countries like Ghana or other places, they value tilapia that we don't value in Sierra Leone. How do they get to that point? It's because somebody promoted. So how much promotion are we bringing? How much promotion are we bringing to our food systems? How much awareness raising are we bringing to our food system? If we don't tell our own stories, other people will tell it for us. And it will make the farmers that are producing this food think that there is no market. So if we want to keep these farmers in business, we want to keep our own self-sufficiency in food, let's take our own taste back to our African food. We all have our cultural food stuff. Let's focus on them. Okay, thank you. Let me continue with the questions. Martin, have you been able to come on board? Martin, have you been able to come on board? If yes, please let me know.
Bridgetta, I don't think so, because I'm just seeing his message in one of the groups saying that he's having troubles connecting. Let me see if I can call him directly via WhatsApp. Maybe that could help.
Is Martin online now?
He's on WhatsApp but can't connect via Zoom.
Wow, this is serious.
Let me see if I can reach him from here. I'm not sure.
Okay, please try and see if you can reach or link him, and let's see what happens. Hello. So we are still on how can we are looking at threats. Threats is our people moving away from our African food, the ones we are able to grow. Threat is our changing and just following people and don't know why we are following them. Threat is our not marketing our own food to our children or to the next generation.
Yeah,
those are
Martin is, he's back, Bridgetta.
Okay, this is good. Martin, welcome. Yes, so did we
hello.
So we spoke about sensitization. Martin, we're on question 5, so I want you to give your own contribution. We are asking the question, question 4. What are the major threats to food sovereignty in Africa and what solutions are available? We want to know the solutions that are available to these threats. Maybe Martin has gone off again. Okay, if Martin has gone off, Mariama, let's continue. Let's go to the next question. It says, how can we use intra-Africa trade as a way to raise the resilience of the domestic regional food markets to external shocks? Let me repeat the question again. It says, how can we use intra-Africa trade as a way to raise resilience of the domestic and regional food markets? That's a question. Did you
Can you go over your question again? Can you go over your question, please?
Yes, let me do that. It says, how can we use, it says, how can we use intra-Africa trade as a way to raise the resilience of the domestic and regional food markets to external shocks? We know that there are lots of external shocks. For example, at the moment right now in Africa, we are not involved in other people's war, but we hear that some war somewhere is affecting us, our food systems. So we are talking about how can we use trade between African countries to raise resilience for ourselves of the domestic market and regional food markets so that we can build resilience against external shocks? How can we use intra-African?
Yeah. So I'll start with a bit of the statistics. First of all, it's appalling, or really start to know that trading within Africa is one of the lowest. This is a fact I had known, but someone also reiterated that this morning. I think it was in the first session where they were talking about the percentage of trading that happens within European countries. I think he cited 70%, and within Asia, it was about 50 to 60%. In Africa, it's 18%. So what that means is that there's very little trading that happens among African countries. That is sad. We're not tapping into the potential or the opportunities that are there to support ourselves as a continent. So with that fact, how do we sort of like leverage on the inter-Africa trade, right, to raise resilience? So with this new pact that the African countries have come up with, what I would say is, one, we need to speak the same language. I think that was touched on as well this morning, where we're saying that we need similar policies, but we also need standards, policies and standards that cut across the continent. And here I give an example. For instance, if I would like to, because I also do hot sauces, if I would like to export my hot sauces out of Sierra Leone, I would need to have standards in Sierra Leone that would enable me to easily export my hot sauce to Nigeria or Ghana. We don't want lots of sort of like difficulties in exporting. So for instance, there's this very big cassava farmer in Sierra Leone that says, oh, he has some difficulties exporting his cassava products out of Sierra Leone because of the language barriers that we have. That's one. We have French countries, we have English-speaking countries, mostly in Africa. So those are some barriers that, you know, we need to sort of like reduce. We're not going to change the languages, but sort of like have a uniform system that will speak to each other for both Anglophone and Francophone countries. And simply put, we also just need to improve trade. So we need to be able to get our products across to the neighboring country. If I want to take my products to Guinea, it should be easy for me. I should just go to sort of like a supermarket or some outlet there and say, hey, I would like to bring in my products. What are your standards? So we need to have at that very high level institutions that will speak to each other. So if I want to import exports to a neighboring country, maybe I would need to go to maybe SLIPA or NIB. I don't even know which organization anymore. So there needs to be clarity before I move along. There needs to be clarity on what's happening in the other country, what the standards are in the other country, what kind of quality of products are they looking at. So we need to have a system that encompasses all that we do, but also set standards that would speak to the different countries within the region. I think that's one way that we can leverage on, you know, this facility that we have and improve intra-Africa trade. And this would ultimately improve on our resilience. We saw during COVID that there's so many issues with importing goods from China, for instance. But those of us that are in processing businesses, we had to wait months and months in order to bring in our goods from China or from Turkey. That takes a long time, and that also affects business. Businesses have been closed because of such difficulties in the past. So we need to support each other. I'm sure in Ghana you have, or in Guinea, you have businesses that are in packaging and packaging. So we need to leverage on these opportunities. But first, we need to have a bit of clarity on what is there. That's one, but also how do we access them? So for me, that would be it. And I think there's also a side two to your question. So raise resilience, that's it. And regional. Okay, so I think I've answered the question, correct, Bridgetta?
No, you did not completely answer the question.
Okay, what is part two?
How we could raise our resilience to external shocks.
Mm-hmm.
Out of Africa shocks.
Okay. So there again, if I take an example of the poultry sector of, okay, so fuel, right? It's something that diesel, it's something that's affecting us on a daily basis. We have Ukraine, the war in Ukraine and Russia that's affecting our access to wheat, but also to fuel. And that has disrupted the entire system. That has caused a rocket. So like skyrockets in the prices of pretty much every commodity that you can think of in country. So for me, it would be sort of like, one, we have to advance from where we are right now, produce a little bit more, process a bit more, transform a little bit more, and trade within Africa. For me, simply put, that's what I would say. And for me, that is one way to cope, but also to increase our resilience. We need to be more dependent on other African countries than outside of Africa. We need to trade more. But what that means is we need to produce more. The things that we need from different countries need to be available in other neighboring countries, right? Because now the platform has been set. So we just need to tap into it, use a bit more, be more innovative, and also push ourselves out there and connect a little bit more. Over.
Thank you very much, Mariama. There is something I want to talk about intra-Africa trade. Do you know that it is cheaper? Let's start with flights. To go to UK rather than to go from Sierra Leone, or let's say from Nigeria, rather than go to a lot of other African countries. So I'm just talking about flights. Do you know that the ships that come to Africa, if, for example, I am in, let's say, Nigeria, I want to send goods to Sierra Leone, they will have to take my goods from Nigeria, go to Europe before bringing it to Africa. Do you know that is what happens? So the challenge we have is that as Africans, we must take the lead to invest in the infrastructure that we need to trade within each other. So for example, the cheapest means of transporting commodities is not a truck, it's a ship, a seagoing vessel. So I know we have Africans with the capacity and the finance, blah, 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 to buy these containers or to buy these ships and start transporting so that we can be able to do trade within each other. Sending our grains by flight is not something that is, you cannot even think of it in that manner, even by trucks. So the best way we need, or the best thing we need, we can put in place is this infrastructure that I can be in Sierra Leone and be able to send my product to Zambia easily without stress. I can be in Uganda and take my things to Cameroon, no problem. So as Africans, we are not, with the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, it is good that we can trade within each other. It is good that they are removing barriers. It is good that we speak the same language. Let's look at infrastructure and the opportunities. I'm talking here infrastructures and opportunities because I know I am talking to business people. The dependency on government to do all of this is out of the way. Let's forget about that and let's see the challenges and problems as opportunities. Let's look at it. I need to transport goods from Freetown to Namibia. How do I get these goods to that place? Somebody wants to transport from
open.
Are you saying something, please?
Oh,
so we
apologies.
Okay, so we need to look at all of these things. Let's put them in place because these are the things that make moving goods within our countries easier. If you go to Europe that has the highest level of inter-country trade within themselves, you see that a lot of these things, you see moving goods and trucks moving goods within borders. So it makes it easier for them. What are we doing? We need to put that in place of trade and be able to get the resilience. For example, we say Nigeria is one of the highest oil producing countries, and Nigeria is situated just within, let's say if it's by flight, maybe 3 hours from Freetown. We are having all of these issues. Even Nigeria is having issues with their own petroleum. So how do we build resilience? Let's think about innovative ways and bring solutions. We are business people.
Bridget,
Yes,
I just wanted to add as well. You know, you talking about logistics, that is so important. I had a similar experience a couple of weeks back. I wanted to get some products from some goods from Nigeria, from the north. It cost me so much money to get it from the north to the south, but just getting it from Lagos to Sierra Leone, it took about 3 weeks to get here, and all the fees that you pay, the taxes and everything, and just to like, there's just no mechanism for ease businesses, especially now. You have to pay all the taxes, okay, fine. But then just logistics, it's so hard to move things from one place to another. Like you said, it's just so much easier to move from here to European countries or American countries, right? So that I do agree, that's definitely something that we need to work on and improve on. Infrastructure is paramount.
Okay, thank you. We don't want to just come and talk. We want solutions.
NutriGreen is back. NutriGreen is back. Martin is back.
Pardon me?
Yes, please. My name is back.
Martin is back.
Off meeting.
Wonderful. This is wonderful. Wonderful.
I hope I'll stay a bit longer.
Welcome, Martin, welcome. So these are some of the challenges we have to fix in Africa, communication and all the rest of it. So let's move on. We are talking about how we can, how intra-trade between each and every African country can help us to get resilience from external shocks. Okay, we are moving to another question. So Martin, you will take this. You say, what are the interlinkages between agriculture and other industries? What are the linkages? Martin, this question is for you. We want to know the linkages between agriculture and other industries. Please help us with that. Thank you. Over to you. Martin. Mariama, Martin, are you back or are you with us? Martin. Is Martin here? If not, Mariama, let's move on. Did you get my question, Mariama? Mariama.
Over, please. Can you go over, please? I lost you for a bit. Can you go over the question?
Yes, let me do that, please. It says, what are the connections between, what are the interlinkages between agriculture and other industries? What are the connections or the interlinkages between agriculture and other industries? Please, Mariama. Mariama,
okay.
Did you like, okay.
Yes, I did. I got you. So there's a saying that goes sort of like, no man is an island, right? And simply put, it's the same thing that applies to the ag sector. Okay, so Martin is back. Hello, Martin. So no man is an island.
Yes, please.
And it's the same with agriculture. Okay.
So Martin, our question is
I'll leave that to you.
Did you get the question, Martin?
Yes,
it says what linkages between agriculture and other industries. If you can go on that for us quickly, please.
I missed the question. Are you able to rephrase?
Okay, we want to know what's the connections between agriculture and other industries.
Okay. You realize that agriculture is basically the backbone of everything that actually humanity may need. If you go in the processing industry, for example, the clothes that we are wearing, it comes from wool, and the wool comes from cotton. Okay, when you go into the drink industry and beverages, you talk about fruits, the drinks that we they are getting from, the agriculture production. coming about food that we eat, you know, all the way, the entire value chain. Because when we talk about agriculture, we are not about production only, but we're talking about all the value chains that are involved. And that is the interlink that is between agri and any, you know, production venture industry that we can talk about. If you talk about mining as well, you talk about the
Is it me that have gone out, or is it Martin? Hello.
oh, I'd gone.
And you're
Hello?
back. Okay, let's continue, please. We want to round up
Um,
soon.
I'm in a serious disaster here. Yeah, I was saying, yeah, you find that there's an integration, okay, between agriculture and other industries. There's an interdependence and synergy connection because there's an interdependence. So for those in the processing industry, they need products from agriculture. So I feel our many focus would be beginning to engage at the value addition part, not more of production. I think Africa has not failed in terms of production of commodities, production of inputs, production of crops, and all other things that we need. But we have been failing to a larger extent when hello?
Yeah, Martin, go ahead. We can hear you.
Yeah, in a serious disaster here. Are you getting me?
Yes, I can.
Are you able? Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, I was basically explaining the issue of technology revolution and the rapid industrialization that is there. That has to do with the workforce of agriculture and beginning to go into, you know, processing, because much of the products that we have in Africa, we send them out of the country in a raw form. Been a very mistake that we have made for a very long time. Earlier on, I had mentioned, talk about the ceramic industry, okay, talk about making of towels, you know, making of polished furniture. That is the industry of forestry, but with an integration in terms of agriculture production, because you cannot have particular trees and produce them to where they should be vanished and have the end produces, you know, towels, it could be plastics, it could be energy, it could be, and you know, all these other produce. Everything depends on agriculture. But the main challenge that has been there is infrastructure development, which has been lacking for a very long time in Zambia. Then the network system in terms of
Martin, are you still on? I can't hear you.
I can't see him either. I think it dropped off. I mean, Bridget, if I can just add to some of the points that he was making. No.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah.
He comes back,
So
he will continue.
just to add to what he was, right. Just to add, I think another area sort of like agriculture is related to other industries. If you look at energy, we talked about the need for processing that Martin was talking about. In order for that to happen, we need energy. We need some source of energy, right? You also talked about infrastructure. We've been talking about infrastructure, about logistics. We've also talked about the use of machinery in agriculture. We've talked about the use of technology in agriculture. So really, and also if you look at the marketing industry, it's very much dependent on tourism sector or sort of like the earning power of people. So agriculture is the backbone of our society, but it's also very, very much dependent on so many other factors for it to be very good and so like very productive. So I think in terms of interconnectivity or dependency or linkages to other industries, it's not a standalone sector. It depends on several other areas, whether it's energy or transport or tech, in order for it to develop. That's just what I wanted to add. Over.
Yeah. Maybe another addition, I don't know, maybe something was discussed when I was dropped off the network again. So you find that the interdependence of agriculture and many other industries, and also many other industries on agriculture, also comes in with very favorable policy framework, which I feel as African countries we are lacking. When you talk about politics and as well as development, to a larger extent also has an impact on how agriculture can be harnessed and opportunities tapped in. So if policies in our countries are not aligning themselves with the need in terms of agricultural space, you may realize that Africa will continue talking and crying and never come to the realization of what Africa is able to produce. If you look at the debt levels by our countries across, it is my country only in Zambia, but you will agree with me that go to Tanzania, go to Nigeria, go to Kenya, go to Ghana, you find that the debt levels, millions, is more than actually the investment plan by these particular countries in terms of improving agriculture value proposition. I'll give a very practical example. I'm sure you are aware that when you go to Tanzania, about 114 million investment is pushed into agriculture, but they have got a debt of about 1,452 million. Okay, go to Nigeria today, in terms of agriculture expenditure, it's about 543 million, but they have in the same investment of over 1,130 million.
Martin, are you in? Or have you gone out again? Okay. Martin, are you with us?
If you look at the difference, oh, I dropped again. If you look at the difference between the debt that Africa has against the investment that they are pushing into the country's economy, the gap is quite too huge. And this is coming down to us, the young people, because we find that youths, those in the 20s today, in the 30s today, by the time they will live the next 20, 30 years, living actually in debt, okay? And all these issues are things that as young people need to begin to sit on a round table and begin to find ways on how we can restructure our businesses, how we can hold hands. The intercontinental free trade area that is being proclaimed, we need to reach a level where we begin to have opportunities between Ghana and Zambia, between Malawi and Sierra Leone, you know, Congo and Ethiopia, you know, and work together. That way, we are going to have different innovations around or interdisciplinary inputs to make that agriculture works for us. Failure to do that, we may be shooting, you know, ourselves in the foot, because we have had enough conversations, we have had enough rebukes. But the question is, after these conversations that we have, what should be done next? What is the policy framework available to make recommendations of what we are discussing work out for the best of Africa? These are the issues that we need to begin to converse at different levels.
Thank you so much, Martin. It's good to have you around. Emma, thank you. Thank you to our participants. Now we're about to round up and to say goodbye and draw the curtain on this session. First of all, our main topic was African grain market and the building resilience. What I want to end with is that, one, to talk about it is good. To hear innovative ways to solve it is good. But there is one major thing that needs to be done is action. There is a saying that if you cannot run, walk. If you cannot walk, crawl. But don't stay in one place. After all of this conversation, we keep talking. If we don't do anything, we will still come back next year and talk. We don't want to be talking, we want to come up with results. If you cannot do a huge farm or you cannot support somebody do something huge, you can start even from your backyard. We can be able to get food sustainability or security. So for example, there are so many innovative ways that people do gardening and agriculture these days. Even today, as I speak to you, I'm thinking of trying to encourage people to do urban agriculture. So don't just sit down and wait. No, nobody has the responsibility of feeding you. So let us learn to feed ourselves in Africa, because we need to have food before we can think of anything else. We have grown past this level that we are still thinking about what we are going to eat. So let's bring solutions, let's take actions, and let's do something. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. See you in the next session. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.
All right, thanks for having us. Bye.
Thank you very much for hosting us, and good evening.
Have a good evening. Have a good evening.